Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Puppet Time Online. I'm your host, Eric Wright. It's brought to you by Puppet Kitchen, which is your home for professional puppetry. And I am super excited to have you all back. This is our third show here on YouTube Live and Facebook Live. So thank you for following us over from Instagram. And just like the old show, if you have comments or questions or anything for me or for our guest, be sure to leave them. I think the comments section is now like over here, or maybe it's down here, wherever it is. Type it in. I've got Katrina here over running the show. Hi, Katrina. So she's going to catch all of your questions and make sure that that we can get them answered. For those who are new, just joining us, Puppet Time Online is your chance to sit down with some of puppetry's finest and me to hear about what they know about. And with that, I'm really excited for today's guest. She's a fantastic puppeteer who's from Iran and living currently in Houston. And we met only just once. She wrote to the Puppet Kitchen and said, "Hey, I'm a puppeteer and I'm looking to learn more, and I want to know more about the New York scene. And would you like to get together and talk about what's going on in New York?" And I said, "Absolutely." And that was like March 3rd, right before everything went crazy. And and so now here we are. So with that, I would love to bring in our guest, Afsaneh Aayani. Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's going good. As good as it can be. Thank you for having me today.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So just to get us kicked off, just to get us started, why don't you tell us all a little bit about how you got started in puppetry?
Sure. So how I got started was that I actually wanted to become an actress. And I was getting ready to go to college, I was an 18-year-old with a lot of dreams. And I got to be in the right place, right time. Peter Shumann visits my country often, and I got to be at a place that he had a show, like very random. And at that time, I really didn't know anything actually about puppetry. I didn't know anything about theater. I really, it was this whole new world for me that when I got to see the show, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like I fell in love with it. And I took my entrance exam for college because we have an entrance exam back home. And I took that exam for college, and I got to the theater program. And when it was the time to choose like what we wanted to study, I chose puppetry. And I think that was the best decision I've ever made in my life.
So just to catch us up, when you say you had entrance exams back home, where's your back home?
Oh, I'm from Iran, and I lived in Tehran before
Nice.
coming here to the US. Yeah, and that's where I got my bachelor's degree.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And also for those of us who are not necessarily part of the puppetry community, Peter Shumann is the head of Bread and Puppet Company in Glover, Vermont. So when he came to visit, would he bring the whole team, or like would he come to do big spectacles, or what was he doing
Um,
that you saw
s-
him?
so he was there to do a workshop. It was him and his wife. I think there was one more person with them. I can't recall. It was so many years ago. But I do remember him and his wife, and I do remember that after the show, they had the whole like bread making and kind of like giving the bread to people, and that was just so like magical.
Yeah.
they had the workshop with a bunch of students from the Art University of Tehran. And so they put together, as far as I remember, it was a large puppet, or actually multiple large puppets, and it was all with like water bottles and, like kind of like styrofoam cups and everything. So like disposable material, and they had the show and music and everything, and it was really cool.
That's really cool. I've never seen I've always wanted to see some of the big productions that Bread and Puppet puts on, or I've been part of those workshops. Peter Shumann came to visit my college, Cyril Lawrence, when I was there, and gave a brief demonstration, and really just left me wanting more. But he's an amazing person, really incredible artist. So I'm not surprised. Uh, I'm not surprised that you were so inspired. Tell me, the question now that I like to ask people is, now that you're in puppetry, now that we know how you got into puppetry, tell me a little bit about what keeps you here, and what keeps you going in puppetry.
Yeah. So honestly, like I feel like from the day I started puppetry, being a puppeteer, voice actress, puppet maker, the more I work, the more I fall in love, because there is so much to learn. I feel um, there's never an ending to the learning process. There's never enough. Like, and I love that about puppetry, because you can always learn new things, new tricks, new ways of making puppets, new ways of bringing the show to life. And I think the magic of puppetry is what keeps me in it, because
Hmm.
there is a lot of things that you can do in puppet shows and with puppets that you can't necessarily do with actors, like
Hmm.
your puppets can fly, your puppets can do all these magical things. And I think it is just so beautiful about puppetry. And that just keeps me going and keeps me creating, I guess, the puppet shows and puppets. It's just a never ending world.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, I think. So, can you tell me a little bit about so what was your instruction like in Tehran? Was it, you went to school and said you wanted to study puppetry? What was that like? Where did you start? What did you study while you were there?
So we have programs like here where you can study acting or directing, or puppetry. So um, it's basically the first 2 years. It's a general understanding of theater and theater history, and you learn a little bit about directing and costume design and scenic design and everything. And once you kind of learn a little bit about everything, it also helps you to make a better choice. And kind of I've seen a lot of kids that they change their focus, because like they think they like scenic design, but they come in the first 2 years, they learn that they're actually better in writing plays or
Mm-hmm.
directing. But I stayed with it. I mean, it's just the more I learned, the more I was like, wow, this is just amazing. And then the second half of your education, which is the last 2 years, is where you learn all about different styles of puppet making and puppeteering and voice acting and
Hmm.
directing for puppet shows, costume design for puppet shows, sketching, um, scenic design for puppet shows. So it is very specific.
Hmm.
And it's just for puppet shows. So basically, you come out of the program knowing everything that you need to know. And what was amazing about our program is that all of our professors, we had quite a lot of them. All of our professors are professionals
Hmm.
that are either working in the theater scene or movie and television.
Hmm.
So they all kind of introduced us to the professional world when we were at school. And after, like, I remember the day that I had my final project, and I directed the show for my capstone, that you guys call it here. For my capstone, I directed
Right.
the show, and
Right.
after that, once I graduated, I think about a week after, one of my professors called me and invited me to work with him on TV shows, and I got to work with him for about 4 years after I graduated, which is then
That's
I moved
cool.
here. Yeah, so
Oh, cool.
it is amazing. Like
I I think we had a question too. Do you wanna put in our question? Oh, hey, check it out. We have this new illustrate the
yeah,
question feature. Is there a traditional Iranian puppetry? That's a great
yes.
question.
Yes, there is. We actually, so puppetry is very big in my country. It's very well known. We do have our own traditional puppet. His name is Mubarak, and he is this funny character. It is a marionette style, but it only has three strings, so it's very
Oh.
simple. But the way that the puppet is made, like it can move really kind of funny,
Huh.
and there's usually a person who sits with Mubarak, and they have like a back and forth communication and dialogue between them. And
Mm-hmm.
then in that show there is a lot of other characters where Mubarak goes and have like fights with them. So in ways I feel it's kind of similar to Punch and Judy, that there is
Mm-hmm.
Punch and Judy, and then there's all these other characters. That's the same with Mubarak. There's Mubarak and his wife, and then all these other characters.
That's interesting. Do are the Is it sort of similar to the like the Bunraku state, and I guess Punch and Judy too, where the stories are sort of the same throughout it, like it's the stories are kind of always the same, or like the setups are always the same?
Yeah, it is. A lot of people, I mean, especially the new generation, they tend to change the stories a little bit, but it's always kind of around politics and the problems in the
Mm,
society. Again, like Punch and Judy, where they come and like kind of make fun of the problems, but they also bring it to people's attention.
mm-hmm.
And if there's always somebody who is playing some sort of music live,
Oh,
kind of
cool.
like sitting, sitting beside the like main actor,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so it's very similar. Um,
What's the How far back does Bobarak go? Does he was he, do you know whether that tradition was influenced by Punch and Judy historically, or whether it was the other way around, where Punch and Judy? I know there was a lot of cultural exchange between, especially um, uh, folks in Iran and with the West. Do you
mhm.
know, historically where that comes from or where that lands?
So here is when you're going to catch me, and I'm going to say that I don't know the correct answer. People that do the traditional Persian shows, there is a lot of history behind it. They go and study that,
Mm-hmm.
and they spend a lot of time on learning the history, creating the puppet, and everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Unfortunately, I was not very much exposed to it because I got to be on the other side where I created a lot of shows for television shows and or puppetry for adults.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was not very much exposed to it. So it is really sad that I have to say that I'm not sure about the answer to
I
that
mean, I'm
question.
fascinated. I'm really gonna go like find out. I just think it's so cool when when a culture has a long puppet history and cultural tradition that's like specifically for puppetry, and that has a real niche in the culture. I think this really is really pretty amazing. Um,
Yeah.
were Mubarak shows typically for adults, or for anyone on the street, or for children, or what did that
Um,
shake out with the audience?
Again, that depends. Sometimes it is just for adults because of the language that they use. It's not very
Mm-hmm.
appropriate for kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then there are very many Mubarak shows that are specifically for kids, and there's a lot of singing, and it's just beautiful. A lot of the artists do shows on the street,
Mm-hmm.
but then there are shows that will happen in the little black box theaters.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends on the occasion, depends on which group is doing it.
Cool. That's really cool. I had no idea. That's really amazing. Um, well, okay, so you mentioned though that your exposure to puppetry wasn't so much in that tradition, but really got fired up when Peter Schumann came over and sort of opened up the world from the bread and puppet side. Um, and you also mentioned that you studied a lot of different things in university. Um, I also noticed that you bill yourself as a set designer and a voiceover artist as well as a mask maker. Do you feel like your your study in these other disciplines influences your work in puppetry?
Definitely. I mean, I when I moved here, it was mostly because I wanted to go to school and get my master's degree, which I just graduated in May with my
Hmm.
master's in scenic design.
Congratulations.
And thank you. I really wanted to like study scenic design specifically because I wanted to be able to kind of create the sets that will serve the puppetry and puppet world and puppeteers, honestly, better. I think a lot of times, like, we have to create our own sets, or if somebody else create, or at least that's the problem I've faced before.
Yeah.
It is not like, doesn't happen always for everybody. But what I've noticed was that there was a lot of times that if scenic designers were designing the set without having a background in puppetry, it would create some problems for the puppeteers. I myself have carpal tunnel in both of my hands because of it, because I always had such a hard time like puppeteering, and
Uh-huh.
I ended up like injuring myself. And
Oh,
I know other
interesting.
puppeteers who went through the same thing. And I was
Yeah.
thinking, well, maybe I can serve my community by like studying scenic design and knowing the scenic design and puppetry. I could put them to good work.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think that's great. What do you find yourself translating a lot to other scenic designers or what I guess my question is what do you end up communicating to people who have only studied scenic design, the kinds of accommodations that you would need to make for puppetry?
I think it depends on the style of puppetry that we use. Like for example, for television shows, it's really important to know how to design for the puppeteers that are sitting kind of like under the set, in all these like funky positions, and to
Hmm.
make sure like they have enough room to move around, or um, you know, um, how it's gonna like affect their position on the
Hmm.
set. So I think that is one of the main things that they need to know. They need to know the style of the puppet and how the puppeteer is placed behind that puppet.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that's the most important thing
What
for me.
different styles of puppetry have you designed for? Have you done marionettes
Um,
and hand puppets
y-
and
yeah, yeah. I do a lot of tabletop puppets. That's my
hmm.
specialty. I love paper mache. It's just my everything. I do a lot of tabletop and I think Muppets. These are the most puppets I've done, but I've done quite a lot of shadow puppets and Bobarak, and I
Hmm.
think the least and raw puppets. The least I've built like the least style I've built has been marionettes because
Hmm.
it's its own thing. And like I have a lot of respect for puppeteers, puppet makers who work with wood, and that's
Yeah.
not necessarily my specialty. I am actually taking a class coming
Oh yeah.
October. I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
That's cool. What class is it?
Um, it's an online class, online workshop. One of the wonderful puppet masters, Burned. I do not know how to pronounce his last name, which is really bad, so I don't want to say it wrong. But he lives in Iceland and he does wonderful work. So I'm very
Cool.
excited to take his workshop and actually kind of expand my knowledge about woodworking and wood carving and making those styles of puppet. But yeah, that's the style I'm not necessarily very comfortable or familiar with. Um, I do know how to move marionettes. I've done that before a lot, but building, not necessarily.
Actually, we should take a look at some of the puppets that you sent, photos that you sent pictures of. Can you tell us a little bit about these three characters?
Yeah, sure. So all three of them are tabletop puppets. They're pretty small. I think about like 12 inches tall.
Hmm.
It's still hard for me to go from centimeter to inch. I have to kind of
Sure.
like think about it. And Yeah, these are all tabletop puppets. I built one of them for hopefully the girl that is it, her name is Water Lily. I built it based off of one of my friends, and I'm hoping to create more. And we're gonna do hopefully some show in the near future. And then the wizard is I just built it for one of my friends as a gift because that's what we do.
Yeah,
And
these are so cool.
Thank you. And then the grasshopper, that was also a puppet I made for a little competition, but unfortunately I was late in submitting it. I didn't
Oh,
have time, but I finished it. So now I have a puppet for me.
that's amazing. These are all paper mache heads, or like what's going on with the construction of them?
Yes. So they're all paper mache, head to toe. For the arms and legs, I use wood. And with for joints, I use leather mostly. The grasshopper, however, the body is made out of these like plastic eggs that you guys use for Easter.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it moves really good actually because the eggs can kind of like move and like it gives it a lot of freedom for the movements of the puppet.
That's a
Um,
great idea. I love that.
yeah. So and the neck for that one is um I think it's called spring.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like a
so
metal
yeah,
spring.
so yeah. So it's it just has a lot of like very large range of movement.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Should we look? Let's look at the next one too. So these look like, if I'm mistaken, these look like hand puppets, are they?
Yeah, so this is for sure we did last year. And the puppeteers hold the like back of the head basically.
Uh-huh.
They did not have a lot of like you could only like move their arms and kind of like the movement was very like funny, like
Mm-hmm.
very like firm moving, but it's
Mm-hmm.
because like we wanted them to do that. It was we did Julius Caesar last year.
Yeah.
It was like a suitcase show. We did it before Houston Shakespeare Festival, so before each show we would go and like put the puppet version of Julius Caesar. It was kind of like about like 15 minutes, and people would get to know the story if they were not familiar, and it was a parody. Um, and so, yeah, these are for that show.
That's so cool. Um, the costumes are just great. Did you study costume design when you were in school?
Yes, I loved costume design since I was like probably 8 years old because my mom and my aunt are they make clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was exposed to like sewing and costume design at a very young age. And at school, when we were in our undergrad, we do have like 2 semesters of costume design for
Mm-hmm.
puppets, which is awesome.
That's really cool. Cool. Can we take a look at the next one too? These are so great. Tell me about this guy.
This is for Crop's Last Tape. I directed the show, designed the set, and built the puppets for it. Puppets, there was one. This is a show this is the last show I did actually before I moved from my country. I got to perform in Tehran, and then I got a bunch of awards for it, and we got invited to Poland. There is a festival in Poland that's for students, or students that kind of just graduated, and
Mm-hmm.
it's in Białystok, Poland. So we got invited, and we were able to perform the show in Poland as well.
That's really amazing. Actually, that reminds me, before we look at more of these photos, you've performed all over the world. Do you and a lot in Iran. What do you notice about the differences between audiences or the differences that between the way people react to puppetry in various countries?
I think so. When I performed in Asia and Europe, it was kind of the same. I mean, it was very similar. Of course, each country has their own styles, which is amazing
Mm-hmm.
when you get to, learn about those styles and like what really other people do is just fascinating. But in general, like it is very well known to do puppets for adults, like puppet shows for adults in other countries. But I think the main thing that I noticed was when I moved here,
Mm-hmm.
that when you talk to people and when you even theater people, when you tell them that you're a puppeteer, they think it's for kids, like
Yeah.
puppet shows is for kids, and it's not true. That's not true. Puppet shows are not just for kids. um, Puppet shows are for kids too, but not necessarily for kids.
Not
So
not
I
only
think
for kids.
exactly. I think that was one of the main things that I noticed, and especially in Houston. Also, I mean, there's not a huge puppet scene here,
Yeah.
but even the little, puppetry scene that we have, it's most of the work that is done is for kids and children.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the main thing for me. That was kind of like a almost like a culture shock.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, what did people say when you presented your shows? Like, were they super surprised that your show, was so different from what they were used to, or
Yeah, it was I think, yeah, surprised, and kind of they were like, "Oh, like this can also happen, this is
mm-hmm.
not necessary. Oh, we can do other things too." So I think that was it was not a bad reaction. Everybody was just interested that there's
Yeah.
more to it and that you can do a lot more. And I always try to introduce people to theater groups that I got to know just traveling around the world. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many amazing puppeteers around the world that do amazing, amazing work. And I always try to kind of like bring people's attention to those people and be like, look at all these work that is being produced, and we can do something like this as well. So hopefully, I guess we can kind of go to that
Yeah,
direction.
just keep shifting people's ideas little by little. How did
Yeah.
you end up in Houston, by the way? I think you mentioned something that you followed the person you were working with on a TV show.
Oh, no, for Houston, I randomly moved here. Actually, it's kind of crazy how I made my decision.
Really,
Uh,
like spin the globe and put your finger on the.
that's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did. I I did not know necessarily anything about Houston. I didn't
Uh-huh.
even know they have a school that I ended up going to and getting my master's. I didn't know anything about Houston. I lived in Portland for a year. I worked for Tears
Uh-huh.
of Joy Theater.
Right.
Yeah, it's a puppet theater company, and I worked for them. And then I just wanted more sun,
Uh-huh.
and I just I decided to come to Houston. But I love it here. I mean, Houston is awesome. People are
Yeah.
very kind. It is a very, very diverse city, and it truly feels like home.
That's great. I'm so glad. I mean, you don't often hear about the puppetry community in Houston. have you found other puppeteers? Are there other people, like, is there a guild? Is there, other things going on?
There is here and there. There's not a lot that is going on, but I know that people are trying to do more and they're trying to perform more. There is one of the people here is Puppet Pizzazz, and they do pretty good work. They do a lot of entertainment, and they have very large puppets, and they go to like corporate events or parks, and they do some fun work, and I love their puppets. They're always very well built and beautiful and like very complicated. So I think that is the one that really does like a lot of shows and are very active.
Mm-hmm.
And there used to be another puppet theater company. I can't remember their name right now, but they just don't work anymore. I don't think they've produced anything in about like 5, 6 years, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Bob
Mm-hmm.
and Doctorin.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I don't think they've produced anything for a few years now. So some new groups are popping up, some older groups are dying off.
That's kind of the way of things,
It's,
really. I mean, that's kind of how it always goes. And of course,
yeah,
everything is, completely different nowadays for the next, couple of years at
mm,
least. But
yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you're there. That's like, I feel like it really is true that pretty much every major metropolitan area has some kind of puppetry presence, and it's there for people to discover and build on. And like, you can create a puppet scene, even there's always one, at least one more person that is interested. So I think that's really great. Um, so uh, you've we talked earlier about maybe giving us a little bit of a studio tour. I'm really fascinated to like see what people's setups are like. Um,
Sure.
can you show us a little bit around like
Yeah,
what your studio
sure.
looks like?
Let me grab my laptop. So this is my studio. I guess we'll go from here. I have my sewing machine, of course, set up, and um, I try to clean it up for today.
I mean, it looks
um,
very clean, very organized.
and this is where I have my some of my fabrics, some of my materials. And there's more materials in that closet, more masks. I have my little saw here.
Nice.
Here's where
Love a
I
good skill
go.
saw.
Yeah. And here is like more puppets,
Just a
more
random leg
material.
sticking out. I think that's pretty
Yeah,
standard.
pretty standard. And here is basically my desk where I create a lot of things. Um, but I do have more fabric actually. Let me put there. I do have more fabric, but it's outside of this room because like there's literally no room. It's not a large space, but I'm just grateful I have a space that I can like work and make a mess and
Hmm.
clean up once in a while. So
I did notice there was a puppet laying on the desk there. Do you want to show him off as well?
yes, this is actually the puppet I'm working on right now, the show I'm working on right now. Um, so here is Mr. Poe, Edgar, Edgar himself.
My gosh, that sculpt is incredible.
Thank you. Let me make him sit here. Um, so he is for a show we're doing with Catastrophic Theater.
Cool.
We are hoping that we get to take the shows to people's houses because I mean all the theaters are closed like the rest of the country,
Hmm.
and nobody's doing really anything. And so what we decided to do is to create these like short kind of theater shows and go to people's backyards and porch and perform for them. And
Hmm.
I'm very lucky. I got to be one of the creators and also performers. So I'm doing the Black Cat because what we're doing is during October, and it's a good spooky story for the month of
Mm-hmm.
October with Halloween coming. So,
That's great.
yeah, I decided to make okay, here. I decided to make Edgar as the main character. And
I'm so fascinated with his face. Like it's just so engaging. Can you tell me about how he's made? Is he I know some paper mache is like done on a clay sculpt and then you pull it
Mhm,
off
mhm.
and then you shore it up. That's what you've done
Yeah,
there?
yeah, that's exactly what I do. I usually try to make the puppets very lightweight, again, especially if I'm doing the puppeteering because of my problems with my hands and my shoulders.
Sure.
So this is the best way you can make a puppet super lightweight. So he's completely built out of paper mache, head to toe,
Wow.
super lightweight,
Does he have
and he's
any kind of
pretty
like
large.
rods or dowels or any kind of structure to hold? I know that there's a big, a lot of times the concern with paper mache is that it's not going to be durable
Yeah.
enough. Um,
Oh, no, I put a lot of layers of paper mache, so
okay.
they're definitely durable.
How
Um,
many how many is a lot of layers?
a lot. I for during the first part, which is kind of like doing the paper mache over the clay,
Hmm.
I do usually about like 8 layers, and then
Oh wow.
once I separate it, I do another like 3, 4. So I end up with about like 12 layers.
That's
And then
amazing.
I put some wood fillers on top to kind of
Hmm.
make it smooth and nice. And then another a layer of white paint. And then I start the process of like painting
Hmm.
on the face and generally the puppet. So I feel like all the layers that I put, even the wood filler layer, it helps a lot for the puppet to be very sturdy.
Yeah. And are you just using newspaper and wood glue, or do you have a special formula?
No, I have a special formula.
Do you want to
Um,
share it?
yes, I do. I do. It's actually quite funny because this powder that I use, I can show you. I cannot find it here. So my mom sent it for me. Like every time she sends me a package, she like send me a pound of that powder, which lasts me a
Interesting.
long time.
Yeah.
So I use that powder with water and some wood glue and kind of make it into this paste that is not so watery. It's actually pretty like gooey.
Okay.
And I use butcher paper. I like to
Uh-huh.
use butcher paper because it
Yeah.
has a little bit of like thickness to it.
Hmm.
So it makes your sculpture kind of more sturdy. And also,
More
I feel like
substantial.
if you want to use newspaper, you're gonna need a lot more than 12 layers,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, because it's
just
so
because
thin,
it's
right?
so thin. Yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay, I definitely want to dive into the weeds about paper mache, but did you have a question?
No, I think you were thinking along those same lines as Jess. She asked that exact question.
Oh,
What
put it
is
up
the
on.
paper mache recipe?
Yeah,
But we,
Jess, great question. Loving it. Okay, so I mean, why not? Let's get into the details about paper mache because I feel like it is actually a really accessible style of construction, and I think a lot of people
Yeah.
getting into who are interested in a style of puppetry that doesn't necessarily involve soft fabrics or fleece or foam. I think
Mhm.
this is a really great place to start because you can have so many, you can make puppets that are really long lasting and that look really incredible. So okay, so first you sculpt in clay, and is
Mhm.
it just like a plasticine? Is it like a regular? Is it just
Yeah,
clay?
I can show you. Give me
Great.
a second.
Yeah, let's see it. I love this. Katie, will you put the picture of Poe up on the screen too? Yeah, I love that this.
Okay. So here it is. I
Okay,
I
let's
mean,
see that.
it doesn't look the same anymore because I mean, I kind of like destroyed it a little bit, but
Oh,
this
uh-huh.
is yeah, this is kind of the clay I use. So it's very soft, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
um like once you make your like sculpture, um if you let it sit for a little bit, it'll kind of get more firm, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can start like doing your paper mache on top of it. Um, so that's basically what I do. I just love this clay because like I can create whatever I want. I can shape, and I can go to really like detail like the eyelids and
Yeah.
everything. So yeah, that's what I use. I have a lot of this clay sitting
Do you
here.
reuse it from sculpt to sculpt?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I've had this since 2014.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you start with a sketch of what you're gonna do, or do you just go right into the clay?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just depends. For him, I had a photo of him, a photo of Poe,
Yeah.
and it was actually already a caricature.
Uh-huh.
So I, made my own version of it. But a lot of times for puppets that I build, I just go for it. I kind of have an
Yeah.
idea of what I want to build,
Mm-hmm.
but I just go for it and create from there. And I do have the powder here actually to
Oh,
show
great.
you too.
Gonna take
um,
notes. Gonna get some. You're gonna be our U.S. distributor of this
I
essential
know,
powder
right?
for all puppeteers who want to do paper mache.
Yeah. Um, I'm just gonna see how can I show it to you. Um, So this is the color of it. It is
Oh,
kind of like
funny.
yeah, it is this powder. And
Okay.
yeah, once you like add it to water, it creates this like glue.
Okay.
Um, and I like to add and you shouldn't like you have to work with it a little bit for the to kind of like figure out the consistency, because if you put too much it'll get like you can't work with it you know
Uh-huh. Yeah.
um I like to add some wood glue to it just to make it stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it. The temperature of the water is very important. It shouldn't be too cold, it shouldn't be hot.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of like I think you call lukewarm,
Lukewarm.
right?
Correct.
So,
Great.
yeah. So, the temperature of the water is really important, and usually you don't want to make too much of it,
Yeah.
because it doesn't live overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So like you want to make it fresh every day,
Mm-hmm.
and it's better to make it little by little than have like a
A big
ton of it
batch.
that's gonna
Mm-hmm.
go to waste.
And this is the same technique you use for mask making as well?
I do yes and no. Sometimes I work with different materials for masks. I make a lot of masks as well. That is kind of my hobby.
Cool.
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes I work with leather. Sometimes I work with like the plaster um bandages, I guess, like
Mm-hmm.
it's when people broke bones and all that they use those.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I use that, and sometimes I use paper mache,
Mm-hmm.
and then cover it with like whatever material I want to use. And sometimes I use like hat making materials. So it just depends on what I'm making. It depends on
Mm-hmm.
how sturdy I want the mask to be, and what the project is. So.
That's really cool. Um, all right. I have one other question too, which is like, you came from a country, you came from Iran, and that has this long tradition of puppetry, and you haven't picked that up, but you're working in different styles. You're still working in puppetry. Do you feel any like I'm curious about your connection to that tradition of puppetry, whether you feel any obligation to be connected in in your work to your cultural heritage, or your the heritage of puppetry in general, or heritage from your from the country you grew up in. Do you feel like that influences what you decide to do or what you decide to work on, or how do you decide to work?
I think actually, my background and my culture influenced me more in my scenic design than puppetry, if I'm being honest with you.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
The use of colors, the use of kind of the shapes and architecture, that you can see a lot of that in my scenic designs than puppetry. Um, I think at some point in my life, as a puppeteer, I decided that that was not my thing,
Mm,
that I wanted to, spend the rest of my life because you really have to invest in it. You really have to put time in it. It's not
right.
something that you can pick up and go and perform. You have to study. It's its own thing. And I decided that that was not something I really wanted to pursue. And it just wasn't my thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I really appreciate people who keep that art alive, and I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciate um the shows, but I don't really see myself necessarily going to that style of puppetry, but I do love our stories, and I really hope that I will get to bring some of those traditional stories and fairy tales
Mm-hmm.
into life here and get to put on a show that is about that culture and all those fairy tales because they're beautiful. So I feel I'm more connected in that way than this style.
That's cool. Does your do your parents or grandparents, do they have stories about going to see puppet shows, or I guess the bigger question, which my dad often brings up, is like how does your family react to you being a puppeteer?
Um, so my mom used to take me to puppet shows because we have theaters in Tehran that are only for puppet shows, and you can go like for children shows. You can go there, and most of the time you see puppet shows there. And so she would always take me to those shows, and I feel that's kind of where I started falling in love with theater in general. Um, and I can't tell that they were like very excited about me studying theater because it's, it's super risky. Like,
Yeah.
let's be honest, like this is not something that what the future holds for you. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
steady job. It's not. It's a lot of uncertainty in the future. But also, once I started working and once I started studying, and they saw that I was successful in what I was doing, they were supportive, like really, like one of my biggest supporters. And then
That's great.
after that, kind of everything changed, and now. Like they love seeing everything I create. My mom always asks me like, "Hey, what did you do? Send me photos. Like I want to see." And
That's
we
cool.
always talk about what I do. So it definitely changed over time. It was not necessarily like a very happy moment when I decided to go study puppetry.
Uh-huh.
But now it's changed, and now I have full support of my family.
That's great. That's really great. I
Yeah.
feel like that makes sense in a lot of ways, you want your kids to 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 have a good life and to be successful. It's, like you said, it is a bit risky, but I'm really glad that that's working out. I'm really glad that you're doing such great work, and I'm so happy to have you on the show. This has been really, really sweet.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
yeah, and be sure to keep us up to date with the work that you're doing. I can't wait to see more of the Edgar Allan Poe show and with the Black Cat. I think that's going to be just great. Um,
Thank you.
so thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate the time, and yeah,
We'll take care.
thank you. You too.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for another episode of Puppet Time Online. Um, Now that we're on YouTube, you should be sure to like and subscribe this video and hit the little bell so you know every time there's a new episode of Puppet Time Online. Thanks again to our guest, Afsaneh Aayani. and for showing us around her studio, for talking about her great work. I have time for a couple of shout outs today. Actually, just one big shout out, which is again to remember to register to vote. Remember to vote. There's loads of great sites that are available for you. Vote 411 is one that I've picked out for you today. To go there to see if you're registered, to get information on what's on your ballot, and make sure you're ready to vote on election day. And just to check out more of Afsaneh's work, we have you can check out her website, afsanehaayani.com. She does great stuff. Check out her scenic design; it really is spectacular. So I think that's it. We'll have another episode for you next week, Wednesday at 2 p.m. right in the middle of the middle. Katie will be back with us, and oh, we do have Puppet Kitchen merch now. So you should definitely go to the Puppet Kitchen store and take home some sweet merch. It's good stuff, and more to come. I think I got everything. Did I get everything, Katie, that I was supposed to say?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, with that, as usual, just remember that you don't have to do everything to do something. We'll see you next time.